Every day, I would wake up to the sound of my alarm blaring at 5:30 a.m., and every day I'd lie there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had come to this. I was 29 years old, my name was Darius, and I worked as an Amazon delivery driver. The job wasn't terrible, and there were parts of it that I genuinely enjoyed. The independence, the constant change of scenery, the satisfaction of getting a package to someone on time. But there were also parts of it that weighed on me, that made me question whether I could keep doing this for much longer. It wasn't the physical strain that got to me, though some days were tougher than others. It wasn't the long hours or the occasional rude customer. It was the places I had to go, the homes I had to visit. Every day I would drive through neighborhoods that told stories just by looking at them. Some were tidy and well-kept, with manicured lawns and shiny cars in the driveways. Others were run down with peeling paint, broken windows, and a sense of despair hanging in the air. It was in those neighborhoods that I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. There was one house in particular that I dreaded visiting. It was a small, dilapidated place on the edge of town, with overgrown weeds choking the life out of what had once been a garden. The windows were covered in grime, and the front door looked like it hadn't been painted in years. Every time I delivered a package there, I could feel the sadness emanating from the place, like a dark cloud that settled over me as soon as I stepped out of the van. The people who lived there were a family, parents and 2 young kids. I never saw them, but I could hear them through the walls whenever I dropped off a package. The father's angry shouts, the mother's desperate pleas, the children's cries. It broke my heart, knowing that those kids were growing up in a place like that, surrounded by anger and misery. I wanted to help them, to do something to make their lives better, but what could I do? I was just a delivery guy, just Darius going about my daily routine. It wasn't just that one house either. There were others scattered throughout the town, places where the shadows seemed to linger a little longer, where hope was in short supply. I'd seen things on my route that I wished I could forget, arguments that spilled out onto the streets, neglected children playing in the dirt, elderly people living in squalor. I wanted to make a difference, to do something that mattered, but every day I felt more and more like I was just going through the motions, delivering packages to people who needed more than just material things. And yet, there was a part of me that loved the job. I loved the feeling of being on the road, of having the freedom to move through the world on my own terms. I loved the satisfaction of a job well done, of knowing that I was part of the chain that kept things moving, that brought people the things they needed, even if it was just a book or a toy or a piece of clothing. I loved the little interactions I had with people. The smiles, the thank yous, the brief moments of connection in a world that often felt disconnected. But as much as I loved the job, I knew I couldn't keep doing it forever. The weight of those troubled homes was getting to me, seeping into my bones, making me dread the next delivery, the next reminder that there was so much pain in the world and so little I could do about it. I started to think about what else I could do, where else I could go. But every time I thought about leaving the job, about giving up the things I loved, I felt a pang of regret, like I was abandoning something that had become a part of me. That's when I started to think about moving. I'd lived in the same town my whole life, and while it had its charms, it was starting to feel too small, too stifling. I wanted to go somewhere new, somewhere bigger, where I could start fresh, where I could find a job that still gave me that sense of independence and satisfaction, but without the heavy heart that came with my current route. But where? And how? I didn't have much savings, and the thought of leaving everything behind was daunting. One night, as I was scrolling through YouTube, trying to distract myself from my thoughts, I stumbled upon a video about manifestation. I'd heard of the concept before, the idea that you could bring things into your life just by thinking about them, by visualizing them as if they were already yours, but I'd never given it much thought. It always seemed a little too out there for me, too mystical. But something about this video caught my attention. The guy talking seemed genuine, like he really believed in what he was saying. He talked about how he'd manifested his dream job, his dream home, even his dream car, just by focusing on what he wanted and believing it was already his. I wasn't sure if I believed it, but I was curious. What if it was possible? What if I could manifest a new life for myself, a new job, a new town without giving up the things I loved? What if I could find a way to keep delivering, but in a way that didn't weigh me down? I decided to give it a try. After all, what did I have to lose? I started small, just trying to focus on what I wanted, to imagine it as if it was already real. I pictured myself living in a bigger town, driving through its streets, delivering packages to nice homes, places where the people were happy, where there was no anger or sadness or despair. I imagined myself enjoying my work, feeling fulfilled, like I was making a difference, even if it was just in a small way. I thought about the kind of place I wanted to work, a premium restaurant, maybe delivering food instead of packages, bringing people something that would make them smile, that would bring a little joy into their lives. At first, it felt strange, like I was just daydreaming. But the more I did it, the more real it started to feel. I'd lie in bed at night, picturing my new life, my new job, and I'd start to feel a sense of calm, of certainty, like I was on the right path, like things were starting to fall into place. A few weeks went by and nothing much changed. I was still driving my usual route, delivering to the same homes, seeing the same faces. But I didn't let that discourage me. I kept focusing on what I wanted, on the life I was trying to create. And then one day something unexpected happened. I was delivering a package to a house on the other side of town, a place I didn't usually go. It was a nice neighborhood with big houses and well-manicured lawns. As I pulled up to the address, I noticed a sign in the yard, "For rent." I don't know what made me do it, but after I dropped off the package, I found myself walking up to the house, peering in through the windows. It was a beautiful place, much bigger and nicer than the apartment I was currently living in. I could picture myself there, living in a place like this, in a neighborhood like this. I jotted down the number on the sign and decided to give it a call. I wasn't sure if I could afford it, but something inside me told me to try, to see if maybe this was the sign I'd been waiting for. The landlord answered, and we arranged to meet later that day so I could see the inside of the house. When I walked through the front door, I knew this was the place. It was perfect, spacious, well-lit, with a big kitchen and a cozy living room. I could see myself here, living in this town, starting fresh. I asked the landlord about the rent, and to my surprise, it was more affordable than I'd expected. It was still a stretch, but with my current job I could make it work. But that wasn't the only surprise. As I was talking to the landlord, I mentioned that I was thinking about making a career change, that I was looking for a new job. He smiled and told me that his cousin owned a restaurant in town, a high-end place that did a lot of delivery orders. He said they were looking for a new delivery driver, someone reliable, who knew the area and could handle the fast-paced environment. It was like the universe was handing me exactly what I'd been asking for. I couldn't believe my luck. I asked for the details, and the next day I went to the restaurant to apply for the job. The place was even nicer than I'd imagined. A trendy, upscale spot that was always busy, always buzzing with energy. I talked to the manager, told him about my experience, and before I knew it, I was hired. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I moved into the new house, started my new job, and began settling into my new life. It was everything I'd hoped for and more. I loved the work, the fast pace, the satisfaction of delivering something that brought people joy, the sense of being part of something bigger. The tips were great too, and the people I met were friendly and appreciative. It was like I'd found my place, my purpose. Looking back on it now, I realized that what I thought was luck wasn't really luck at all. It was the power of manifestation, of focusing on what I wanted and believing that it was possible. I didn't just stumble into this new life. I created it. I took control of my own destiny, and in doing so, I found a life that makes me truly happy. And so, here I am, living in a new town, working a job that I love, delivering not just packages but happiness. I still think about those old neighborhoods sometimes, about the people I used to deliver to. I wonder if they found their own way out of the darkness, if they've been able to create a better life for themselves too. I hope so. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we all have the power to change our lives, to manifest the future we want. We just have to believe in it and in ourselves.